My daughter always loved telling the truth. When I asked her if she thought I was pretty, she looked right at me and said, "Honestly, Mom, you are the ugliest mom at my whole preschool." When my mother-in-law pointed her finger in my face and called me a wasteful spender for buying her an expensive backpack, I asked my daughter how that made her feel. She smiled and said, "Honestly, I was pretty happy watching you get yelled at." My husband once joked with her, asking if she would take care of me when I got old. She scoffed. "I am not taking care of her. When she gets old, she should just hurry up and be put 6 feet under." My heart went completely cold, but her eyes curved into happy little crescents. I am just telling the truth. Later on, a detective came to our house doing a routine neighborhood canvass and asked my daughter a few standard questions. Once again, my daughter told the truth, but this time it was a truth she would regret for the rest of her life. The detective knocked on our door to update the local residential registry. My 7-year-old daughter, Brenda, blinked her big eyes and asked, "Why do you have to write our names down?" The detective gently patted her head. "It helps keep the neighborhood safe, and it helps us make sure bad people do not kidnap little kids." Brenda nodded, her face suddenly lighting up with an exaggerated look of realization. "Oh, I get it. You want to catch kidnappers. Well, isn't my mom one of those? She told me out of her own mouth yesterday that she kidnapped me." The smile froze completely on the detective's face. I stared at my daughter in absolute shock. Seeing the sly, calculating gleam in her eyes, my brain started to buzz. Brenda had a habit of saying honest things specifically designed to humiliate me and cause me pain. Just yesterday, I refused to let her eat too much junk food before dinner. She threw a fit, calling me an evil mother and screaming that she didn't want to be my daughter anymore. I was exhausted and furious, so I snapped back, "You're right, you aren't my daughter. I kidnapped you." At the time, she argued back saying she didn't believe me. I never imagined she would take a sarcastic comment she didn't even believe, package it as the truth, and feed it directly to a police officer. The detective was already looking at me with a completely different expression. I forced out a dry, awkward laugh. She was misbehaving yesterday and I lost my temper. It was just a stupid joke. I didn't think she would take it literally. The detective's brow relaxed slightly. He turned to Brenda. "Little girl, you can't joke about things like that. If your mom gets mistaken for a kidnapper, she could go to jail." Seeing Brenda nod, the knot in my chest finally loosened. I thought the ordeal was over, but a second later, Brenda looked up with an expression of pure, innocent sincerity. "But my mom can't have babies. If I wasn't kidnapped, where did I come from?" The scrutiny and suspicion instantly returned to the detective's eyes. I panicked and quickly tried to explain. "I had an IUD put in right after she was born. When kids hear about birth control, they misunderstand what can't have babies means." I tugged on Brenda's sleeve, silently begging her to stop talking. She refused to listen. "Mom couldn't have babies right after she got married, but I am already 7 years old. I had no idea how a 7-year-old girl possessed the mental capacity to connect those dots. But when you thought about what she was implying, it was impossible not to jump to horrible conclusions. My husband and I had been married for 6 years. I had an IUD for those exact 6 years, so how could we possibly have a 7-year-old daughter?" The detective clearly did the math in his head. His expression turned dead serious. "Ma'am, I am going to need to see the child's birth certificate." My stomach dropped to the floor. There was no birth certificate for Brenda in this house. 6 years ago, I had literally fought off human traffickers to rip this child out of their hands. When the police eventually pulled the files on her biological parents, the reality left everyone speechless. My husband and I had looked at each other with pale faces, sharing the exact same thought. If we sent this poor baby back to her biological family, living with them would be a fate worse than death. We simply couldn't bear it. So we went through the system, adopted her, and raised her to this day. Brenda probably thought my angry comment yesterday was just a cruel joke, but she had no idea that the joke was actually the truth. The only reason we never told her was that we didn't want her to feel like an outsider in her own home. But now, if I didn't confess, this detective might actually put me in handcuffs. Just as I opened my mouth to explain the adoption, Brenda suddenly shrieked in mock excitement.